biggest groups in the world. And I'm talking about Genesis. In 1969, this group was formed and released an album in that year called Genesis to the Revelation. And boy, since then has there been some revelations. Former lead singer Peter Gabriel this year released an album called So. It's topping the charts at the moment. Their drummer turned lead singer, Phil Collins, well, what can you say about Phil Collins, except that he's a genius. Their keyboard player, Tony Banks, turned songwriter and very successful in film scores. And their guitarist, Mike Rutherford, the last but not the least, turned songwriter and has formed a group called Mike and the Mechanics and is also making an impact on the charts. But tonight, we're going to look at Genesis. Next week, we'll look at the individuals in profile. I hope you enjoy this special tonight and next week. But tonight, as I said, it's Genesis, the Invisible Touch.
Genesis in the early days, we took influences from a wide variety of places, I think, you know, maybe church music, folk music, rock music, black music, and they were all an influence, although, you know, subtle at times.
Well, going back to those early days, Tony, the group gathered a following as being an albums band, whereas, you know, it had always been the case of singles, and then, you know, the album would follow on. Was it something that was purposely done?
Well, no, we tried writing singles. We just didn't seem to be very good at it. And not just that, we couldn't get them played on the radio. It was, you know, I don't know what it was. Perhaps they didn't sound right. And but it took us a long time that way. And we just built up a following through playing concerts live. We used to we'd go to a place supporting somebody, then we'd go back there again 2 or 3 weeks later, maybe headlining, you know. And you'd play to some tiny audiences, and we once played to 3 people.
In those days, I do remember actually that our pinnacle, where we wanted to get to, was to play at the Marquee Club in London. We thought if we'd done that, then we could retire. I mean, that was our goal. And I've never ever looked very far ahead, actually. I mean, I think it's important not to, because you start having expectations if you look too far ahead. I just kind of do it project by project or year by year, and that way, you don't worry, you just do things rather than actually think about them.
Well, I mean, like, initially starting off, I mean, Peter Gabriel was the drummer, wasn't he?
Well, he liked to think he was the drummer in the very original, but that's going back quite a way.
Yeah.
But he was the singer, really. I mean, you know, his drumming, yeah, wasn't the greatest drumming.
Yeah, well, he, I think, because we had a lot of instrumental passages in the music, and he had nothing else to do because there was no singing, we let him have a bass drum. I say we let him have it. He already had the bass drum. The bass drum was an institution when I arrived, so I couldn't exactly get rid of it. We phased it out by filling it with a very, you know, like carpet and blankets, so you couldn't actually. It was like you couldn't actually hear it. And of course, but only meant that when he picked it up to throw it around the stage, which he did, it sort of carried more weight and did more damage. Right. So that wasn't a great idea. But he actually did keep a bass drum and a tambourine, and so it was like almost having 2 drummers in the band sometimes.
When Phil came, first time we had, you know, a great drummer. As before, I used to be pretty involved with the drum parts, and I got a lot of pleasure from that. And then we got someone in who could play the things, and so as I would bring my kit into one end of the rehearsal room, Phil would sneak out the drums down the other end. And I think my bass drum became heavier and heavier as the tour would go by. And I think that would be Phil filling it up with blankets, so no one heard what I was doing.
records, I think I've always done a fair amount of backing singing. I mean, actually on Nursery Crime, we all did backing singing.
Right.
But I used to sing along, live I used to sing along with Pete on as much as possible.
Right.
On songs like Get 'Em Out by Friday, which was on Foxtrot and the live album, and Supper's Ready, stuff like that. I used to do as much of the backing singing live as I could. And I think, just jumping ahead a few years, when Peter left, and the outcry was, well, Phil sounds just like Pete. You know, maybe people thought I was trying to sound like Pete, I don't know, but I think one of the reasons for that was that my voice was there in the background. And it's just one of those association things. You don't even think you're hearing it, but it's there. So when you take one away, you're left with the other one. And there's something familiar about it. And I guess people didn't actually realise that I did a lot of singing in the old days.
Now, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway was a very sort of, I felt, an experimental album, something that was new from Genesis. I mean, did that take a long time to record?
It did. It took a very long time to record, actually. Yes, by the time I sort of, I mean, for us in those days, I mean, it took about 5 or 6 months, I think, to do the whole thing from beginning to end. And we must admit, by the end of it, I think we all hated it. But I mean, you know, I look back on that as a very strong album. I like it very much.
I think the thing was that we decided, as it was a plot, you know, a story, to have one person write the words, and that was Peter's. You know, we all decided that it'd be better if Peter wrote the lyrics. So we all were writing the music in this house, so we were all living together as well as writing the music together. And it was very claustrophobic, I think, at times. And then we ended up finished with the music finished, but still the lyrics weren't finished, and so we had to take a break from it, and then Peter was trying to write the lyrics and rewriting stuff. And we ended up going to a house in Wales, because we had to move out of this other place. And we went to a house in Wales and lived together. And it just seemed to go on and on. Although I don't remember how long, you know, feeling that at the time so much as you've mentioned a few times now. But it was a very lengthy process. And then we went out and played the whole thing live as well, which was like a double album, and that was all we played. We did that, and then we did the musical boxes.
It was very difficult for the audience sometimes, I think. I mean, I think it was great that we did it. I'm really pleased we did it. But I mean, you know, trying to play 4 sides of the albums, and some of the songs were difficult songs to play live, didn't come across too well. And I think the audience were there, and they wanted to hear the old favourites like Supper's Ready and The Night and things, you know. And I think it was difficult, but I think once they got the idea that's what we're doing, and we did, it was a very kind of lavish kind of show in a sense for those days, and we used this 3 big slide screens behind us, you know, and we had 1,000 slides. We used to create these kind of environments behind us. It looked lovely, and lots of effects, you know, I mean, the silly effects happening all the way.
I was going to say, because that tour started to have another landmark of where you were taking more than just a concert into the concert halls. It was becoming a total, not so much a concept, but there was a whole performance going on around you.
Yes.
Which I don't think audiences really had experienced that much before. I mean,
no. I think people were. I mean, I think some people were amazed by it. They loved it, you know. But
in America, we actually played that thing without the album being out as well, which is even more suicidal, really.
Yeah.
But as I say, fans did. They ended up going for it.
Right.
And we set this is flashback actually, but the very high standards. I mean, we had these 3 screens, and if we'd turn around, and if one screen was wrong, we'd give this guy hell afterwards. And there's 1,000 slides.
Well, I think there must have been 2 shows out of the 120 odd we did of that where they all worked perfectly. And you get sort of like a lovely New York landscape, and on one side there's going to be a cow, you know, for no reason at all, stuck there, because they just get completely out of sync. And then you'd see the guy trying to flash through to get the right one, you know, and it would just look so amateur. It took away all the mystery. But there were some lovely moments, like the opening, for example. The opening was just a series of slides depicting a dawn rise over Manhattan Island. And it just looked stunning, I think, you know, because it just got slowly lighter, and it happened so you could hardly see it. It was almost like a movie film. And it just got gradually brighter over the introduction of that song, which was a long piano introduction. And it really was amazing. Some great things in it. But I think sort of somewhere towards the end of side 3, sometimes it got slight low points, but yeah.
It's a lot to take.
I didn't enjoy playing that show, actually.
No.
And of course, alongside all that was when we knew that Peter was going to leave.
What was the dissatisfaction at that stage with him?
Well, there's lots of reasons. I think personal reasons. I mean, his wife he was the first person, which you brought up the other day, the first person out of all of us to have children, and that was not an intrusion, but it was less like another thing to try and deal with whilst trying to get the group off the ground. And so there was problems with the actual birth of that child as well. So just domestic stuff, and you know, there was a sort of blinkered tunnel vision with trying to get the group going, and all of these outside things that Peter wanted to try and do. He was offered by William Friedkin to collaborate on a screenplay idea, and in one point during the writing of The Lamb, he left for a week, and then he came back. So we kind of knew that anything could happen. And
Yeah.
I think halfway through the tour, we decided that that was enough. So we had to do half the tour knowing he was going to leave. And so we'd meet in the dressing room, you know. And we'd all be together all the time, but then we'd all be like a 5-piece band in the dressing room. And after the gig, we'd sort of maybe meet and say, well, what are we going to do after Pete leaves? You know? But there was never any doubt that we would carry on.
Yeah.
Because I think by this point, the coverage of what Peter was doing was almost eclipsing the musical aspects of what people were writing about, at least. And I think we all just felt, well, let's keep going just to show them, you know, that actually there is 5 writers in this band and not just the one guy. Because I think, you know, everyone thinks that the singer does everything, you know.
Yeah.
The crawlers covered the floor in the red oak corridor. For my second sight of people, they've more lifeblood than before. They're moving in time to a heavy wooden door where the needle's eye is winking, closing on the paw. The carpet crawlers heed their callers. We gotta get in to get out. We've gotta get in to get out. We've gotta get in to get out. There's only one direction in the faces that I see, and it's upward to that ceiling where the chamber's said to be. Like a forest fight for sunlight that takes root in every tree. They are pulled up by the magnet, believing they're free. The carpet crawlers heed their callers. Hey, we gotta get in to get out. We've gotta get in to get out. We've gotta get in to get out. My man, it's Superman, held in kryptonite. And the wise and foolish virgins giggle with their bodies glowing bright. And through the door, a harvest feast is lit by candlelight. It's the bottom of a staircase that spirals out of sight. The carpet crawlers heed their callers. Hey, we gotta get in to get out. We gotta get in to get out. You gotta get in to get out. The porcelain mannequin with shattered skin feels attack, and the eager pack lift up their pitchers. They carry all they lack. The liquid has congealed that has seeped out through the crack, and the tickler takes his stickleback